back. I don't know if you could tell by this outfit, but I'm just recording a whole bunch of these so that I can go back at a later date and edit them and then post them for you guys. Welcome! My name is Rebecca Thorne. I'm, again, always very excited to have you guys here today. In this video, I want to talk about plotting your novel. And I say this loosely because I'm sure many of you have heard there are the plotters who go through and plot everything about their novel from start to finish. There are the pantsers who don't plot anything, they just write by the seat of their pants. And then there's me. I'm in the middle. Hi. I'm actually a plantser. Yes, a plantser. And I count myself right in the middle because I am one of those people who is not super inspired when I plot everything out always. I can't plot the way that some people can. I spend too much time figuring out the details, and then when it's finally time to sit down and write, I get super, super uninspired, and I just can't do it. But the pantsing didn't really work for me either, because then you have to rewrite your novel all the time. I cannot explain to you how many times I've written 60,000 words, realized that there were major structural plot issues, and then had to start from the beginning and rewrite from zero another 60,000 words. And then with the same novel, sometimes I had to do that 2 or 3 or 4 times. I'm writing 300,000 words for the same story. So I found something that works for me that's kind of right in the middle of those two options. There are a lot of different ways that you can go about plotting your novel. There's a lot of different methods for doing so. The Better Novel Project is a really great website. That woman analyzed different bestsellers and then found common themes within them of like different scenes that would happen and why it works and how it helps your novel grow. And then she has like a plot sheet kind of where you can go through and make sure that you have these different scenes to ensure that your book will be a bestseller. I tried it. I really liked it, actually. I was very impressed with a lot of her research, but it was a little too rigid for me. I didn't really work that well with it. That was, however, the book that I got an agent with, so, I mean, it must have done something right. The next one that I kind of looked at was the Snowflake Method. I'll link to that below, but it basically starts with, like, how you're drawing a snowflake, where you start with, like, a triangle, and then you add like an upside down triangle, and then you add like little tiny triangles on side the edges, and soon you have this super complex, very complicated snowflake that started from very basic shapes. And that's a really great plotting method. You know, you start with the 1-sentence summary, the 1-sentence pitch, then you move into a 5-sentence pitch, then you move into a 2-paragraph pitch, then you move into a 5-paragraph pitch. And then eventually you're breaking down the characters and really just grinding into the meat of this story to figure out what you're going to be doing and how. Again, I liked that method. It was a little in-depth for me. So I kind of found something that's slightly in the middle, and I want to talk about what I use. Now, my plotting method is kind of the Snowflake method, but it cuts off at like step 3. I come up with 5 sentences, and I tie word counts to them. Now, this works for me because each sentence correlates with a certain part of my novel. So my first sentence is my inciting incident. This is how the story starts. What event happens in the first chapter of your novel that kicks off the story you want to tell? Then I have the 25% mark, and this is where the main character decides that they are going to be going for this event. You know, this is where they leave home, where they leave the farm. They have an adventure planned. They're about to go and tackle the world, you know, but they leave their home life at the 25% mark. The 50% mark, up until this point, the main character has kind of been pushing back on doing this. Like, you know, there's something wrong with them, how the main character is progressing in the story. They don't really want to be there. They don't really want to be accomplishing this. And then the 50% mark happens. And in the 50% mark, everything changes. You know, there's a big event that happens at the halfway point that kind of changes their entire mentality on the problem that they've been facing. Then I go into the 75% mark, which usually kicks off the very end of the book. You know, it's kind of like that rising action, and then you get to the climax, and you're about to turn that corner to fall down into the very end. But the 75% mark is the event that kicks off that ending. You know, there's really nowhere else to go but forward at this point. And then I have a sentence for the very end of my novel, you know, where I kind of want to see my main characters, what type of resolution I'm looking for. So 5 sentences. I mean, again, I don't like to go too in depth with it, but I tell you what, by having these 5 sentences, I know exactly where my story is going to start and the major events along the way. And then if I have any kind of scenes that come along with it, it's very easy for me to just kind of figure out where they fit in. You know, like maybe this one goes right here, but like maybe this one doesn't really fit into, maybe it fits right here. I don't know. But it's kind of fun for me to build a bit of a scene list from that point. I don't ever go too in depth with it, but you know, we all have a couple scenes in mind when we get a book started. So having those 5 sentences and then adding those extra scenes into the chronological order of it helps me really approach a novel from a very logical point of view. The last thing that I do is actually for pacing purposes. I don't know if you've ever written a book where someone's read it and said, yeah, the middle just kind of dragged, you know, or, oh, yeah, I was really engaged for the first 50 pages and then you lost me, you know. It's because you're not pacing your stories properly. You're not giving enough exciting things happening along the way to keep your reader engaged. So I always tie with my 5 sentences, I tie word counts to them. So what I do is I figure out how long I want my book to be. So let's say that I want my book to be 50,000 words long. So let's pull out our handy dandy calculator, right? 50,000 words. So I'm going to divide that by 4, 12,500 words, okay? So 12,500 words is about where every beat of my story is going to be. So the first kickoff, the one that, you know, the inciting incident is always going to happen. First, you know, 5% of your novel should happen with this inciting incident. So in the first 5% of your novel, you know, you're going to kind of work your way up. By this point, this is 12,500 words. If I get to 20,000 words and I haven't hit this event yet, I'm running over. I'm taking too long and I'm going to have to go back and cut until I can get down to that word count. The middle one is going to be, of course, 25,000 words. The last one will be 37,500. And then the final one is going to be the 50,000 word mark. So my recommendation is to look into the genre that you're going to be trying for. Figure out a word count that would appropriately work for you. Now, another thing to consider when you're choosing a word count for your novel is whether or not you're a long verbose writer or a short kind of minimalist writer. You know, if you're writing a middle grade book and you know that you're verbose, aim for 65,000 words and then cut to 50. I tend to aim for 40,000, 42,000, and then if it ends up around 50,000 at the end after edits, that's great. That's usually what I'm aiming for. But I hope that this kind of helped. I hope that this helped you a little bit make some type of a beat sheet that's not too intimidating. It should work for pantsers and plotters. Plotters can expand as much as you want. Pantsers can cut as much as you want. But I think that it's really important when you get started writing a book to have those 5 sentences before you even go about it. So that's kind of what I'm at. That's my plot beat sheet thing. I'm going to link those other ones down below, the Better Novel Project, the Snowflake Method. I'll find a couple others because there's a lot of different ways to structure a novel and a lot of different methods that people use. And I think it's important when you're first getting started to figure out what works for you. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section below. You can always DM me or find me on Twitter. And I'd love to know what method you guys use. Are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? And how did you figure that out? It's really helpful to see where everybody else is coming from. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Have a good night.